Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of TalkSports, your premier platform for in-depth sports discussion across Grenada and the Caribbean. I'm your host, Michael Bascom, alongside my co-host, former Olympian and based in Toronto, Canada, I should say, Rudy and Sylvan. And today we continue our special focus on the development of track and field at the grassroots level as we highlight the clubs and coaches shaping the next generation of Grenadian, Caribbean, and probably world athletes. We take you to the parish of St. Mark, yes, where a growing movement in athletics is quietly making an impact. And joining us is Denva Welsh. I say Rion because that's the name they know him as. He's a coach and founder of Momentum Track and Field, a program that is more or less dedicated to nurturing young talent and basically, you know, building discipline and creating opportunities for athletes to excel both on and off the field. And Coach Welch hopefully will share details on the formation of Momentum, as we have been doing all along with the other clubs, the challenges and opportunities in developing athletes in a rural parish, and his vision for the future of track and field. Coach Welch, welcome to Talk Sports, along with Rudy and Silva and Coach Welch. Welcome, Coach.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bascom, and good afternoon to your co-host, Mr.
Yes,
Rudy.
Afternoon to you.
Thank you so much for
Afternoon to
having me.
you, sir.
yes, Coach Welch. Take us back to the beginning. I would say that's what we always do. What really inspired the creation of Momentum Track and Field in St. Mark, and what gap did you see in the parish that led you to to start this program, and how would you basically describe the philosophy behind Momentum?
Well, as many of us might be aware, St. Mark's has been a parish that has been on the down low when it comes to athletics, when it comes to track and field in Grenada for a number of years. I think if you're following athletics, if you're an ardent follower of athletics in Grenada over the years, you'd quite agree with me that St. Mark's has not been performing as compared to the other parishes when it comes to track and field in Grenada. As a result of that, myself and a number of other individuals, namely Senator Queens Britton, Shad Noel, Sawan Libari, Mr. Gerald Kojo, Callistus Bonaparte, David Richards, Marty Phillip, we got together and we decided to form an athletics club to bridge the gap and to take care of the existing need when it comes to athletics in the parish of St. Mark's. What we realized is that while many of our athletes, they possess the natural talent, just like any other athlete in the different parishes in Grenada, they didn't have that avenue whereby they will be exposed to what we call a structured training program that will help them to develop their abilities or to develop their talents in such a way that would put them at the same level with their peers, or that would cause them to show up when it comes to national meets, for example, the intercall and so on in Grenada. Now, we understand that we have a lot of deficiencies. We understand that we are a small parish. We understand, for example, that we don't have a 200 meters track. We understand that we don't have some of the equipment that some of the other parishes may have. But we figure that we cannot sit back and not do nothing, like so many would have done over the years. every year after the national primary school games, every year after intercol, you hear persons complaining about how St. Mark's, would have performed and so on. And nobody really seemed to do something about it. So we decided that it was the opportune time to start the club. And of course, here we are today.
Yes, quite remarkable indeed. And you call some names there that if people are mindful, the Marty Phillip, the Callistus Bonaparte, and
Yes,
others. I mean, those names were basically synonymous in track and field in Grenada back then. They have
right.
had their time, and with the Carifta Games and all these things, and they have their trials and tribulations and their comebacks and all of that. As you know,
Precisely.
Callistus would have dominated middle distance and long distance for many years. So, indeed, St. Mark's have had their taste of glory, and it's welcoming, I assume, to do that in terms of bringing back. And interestingly enough, you mentioned that not even a 200-meter track. Is it a 150 or what it is?
Um, I would want to say it's about 180, I think. Not, sometimes we say it's 200-meter track and,
Mhm,
but I think it's somewhere 180, between 180 and 200.
mhm.
But definitely not a 3 or 4.
But while you're at it, are there any plans to do any improvements or expansion? I don't know. Most times you don't have the space and thing to do the sort of expansion because I know it runs right along the boundary with the river and all of that. So, what are the plans for the development of that facility there in particular? That's your main facility.
In terms of development, as you rightly said, the space may not guarantee, may not allow for any expansion, to be honest, because it's right, at the boundary with the river. And of course, you have persons, living so close by to the park, and it does not allow for any expansion, to be honest.
Yeah. I do have some questions at least to raise with you. I give Rudian the opportunity, but let me say good afternoon to Theo Duncan. To you very early indeed. Um, Certainly, it's not SAS that we we push in here, but Theo is right in there. And Mr. Kwame Hippolyte is saying, congratulations to Momentum Track, vision to reality, and strategic implementation. I assume he knows that there have been plans to do that, and he's really saying a vision to reality. Thank you very much. That's Mr. Kwame Hippolyte. He's the Public Relations Officer of the Grenada Athletic Association. And good afternoon to you, Mr. Gordon Boney Julian. Rudian?
Yes, yes, certainly, Mr. Welsh. I just want to congratulate you on starting this initiative. Certainly, it's well needed. Bascom and I speak about it quite some time about, especially with athletics and clubs across Grenada on a whole. When we see, as they say, the small parish, doing big things. I'm so happy to see that. And listen, you don't need a lot. All you need is the will, which is what you and your team has. You have the will, and when there's a will, there always be a way. You don't need
Right.
fully need a track. We grew up doing stuff on the sand and the grass. You have more than what some other places have that have big. So certainly just continue what you guys are doing. And even going back, like we said, St. Mark's has a track club. St. Patrick's don't. So when you look at that, like I said, in spite of everything, the challenges that you may have, you have something that others don't have. And we are really crying out for that. Um, as we know over the years, well, the past year or two, they started with the Paris Sports Council. What role do this Paris Sports Council has in the development or partnering with you on the track club?
In fact, we've had discussions with the parish sports council as it relates to the development of track and field in the parish. And I can say for sure that they have plans in terms of procuring or assisting with acquiring some of the equipment that are needed For example, the long jump mat, yeah. St. Mark's has been without that for as far as I could remember. They also have plans to assist in other areas, which I may not want to speak too much about here, but we spoke about collaborating also. And as a matter of fact, just recently we had a relay meet, and of course that was in collaboration with the Parish Sports Council and SMOD. So indeed, I can say for sure that we have started collaborating, and the Parish Sports Council is really on board to get things going when it comes to athletics in St. Mark's.
Mhm. And how important you see is the grassroots development, especially at the primary school level in St. Mark, because as it is now, you have just one secondary school in St. Mark, and then you have the primary schools, whether it's St. Mark and bordering probably St. John and St. Patrick. So you may have more uh, athletes, more students at that level in terms of the
Right.
primary schools. Yeah. So how important is that grassroots development?
Development is one of the most important, I think. And as a matter of fact, when we started, that's where we started. We started with the grassroots. Our program, our athletes, and still is basically they were more the primary school athletes. That was our focus, because we believe that a parish like St. Mark's, where athletics has not been on the forefront, a parish where football has been predominantly the biggest sport, as most might be aware. And if you want to change that mindset, if you want to change the culture, yeah, if you want to bring the interest of athletics in St. Mark's, then it's important that we start with the grassroots. Yeah, so we started with the grassroots, and of course now we have a couple of secondary school athletes coming on board. We believe, that the secondary school athletes, they're also important, but the grassroots, that is really the way to go, because we're looking at longevity. We're looking at developing our foundation. Yeah, and of course, we can't live with the grassroots.
Yeah, very important indeed. And as you were mentioning the names of some of the athletes a while ago, I still trying to, come to grips, because those names really, people may just look at the present but forgetting the past, right? So, who now are some of the standout athletes emerging from momentum right now, probably after the intercall championships and things? You might recall some names, etc. But who are some of those athletes, and what are the key traits you look for when identifying your talents? But some names that you probably can mention.
Well, presently, some of the primary school athletes, if I should mention, we have a number of under 11s who have been performing exceptional. Last year, when they were under 9, they did pretty well. And now they're in 11. They're on the 11 category, which obviously is a bit more challenging for them, being 4 years and so on. But we're very hopeful, and I can speak of the Nadira Philbot, the Tegan Straker, the Tyrell Charles. I can speak of Kylie. I can speak of the Kai Kado. I can speak of Skylar, just to name a few. And if I was to touch on some of the athletes in the secondary school level, we have athletes like Chris Ferguson, who obviously did pretty well in the recent intercall games, in that he was able to capture the 3rd place in the 3,000 meters under 17 boys. And We have also Makaya Frederick, who I think most of us should know by now. She has been performing exceptionally well throughout the season. We can recall the national champs, being crowned the 200 meters under 17 girl. She went on to perform, even better in the intercal games. So, of course, these are some of the athletes that we have, and we intend to have many more of them showing up their faces as time progresses. What we look at really and truly when we're selecting talent, when we're identifying talent, is that, athletes must have that drive, really and truly, that level of determination that is needed. Because oftentimes we see athletes with talent, yeah, but they the drive is not there. They don't have that level of, they want to do it. They want to get there. They want to achieve. And in some cases, especially when you're dealing with that particular age group, primary school, it's rather difficult because you have cases whereby these athletes might be playing other sports. So it's rather difficult to get them to be in line with one particular sport. And understandably so, that is the age group, obviously, where you find that athletes would be focused on multi-sports. Yeah. So, it's kind of challenging. But of course, these are some of the things that we look for in order to identify the talent and so on.
Yeah. Go on, brother.
Yeah, I hear you talk about the challenge. I mean, I think one of the things, um, maybe your strategy, because everything runs out of track and field. Everybody's running in every sport, football, netball, basketball, everything have to do with running. And maybe is a way to identify talent by just getting athletes on a whole, just sporting personnel just on a whole coming in. And then you could see the identify from that because at that young of a group, I love those those young kids. Um, they play multiple sports, but they also give you a chance to identify as well. Because you see an athlete who is very good in football, you're going to direct them to that path. And that makes you that good of a coach because now you are that identifying person now, not only focusing on only okay, well, it's track and field, track and field, track and field. No, you could identify at the same time. Say, you know what? Even though you have the speed, but I think you're going to be a good football player, or I think you're going to be a good basketball player, or you think you might be better in netball, but at least you're guiding them in the right path. So, just the idea of opening up that door for all outlet of all personnel, it just give you that opportunity as well to see some of those talent. Because some of them who play netball actually should be running track. Some of them who is playing football should just be actually running track itself. So you just open up for that because all sports need to run. All sports need you. It's certainly seeing that. So a quick question: what is the relationship with you and St. Mark's Secondary School? In terms of
When
are
you
you
said
coaching with the
when you said
school? Are
you
you?
mean
Yeah,
in this club, eh? Momentum.
yeah.
Okay.
Right. As well, we have a good relationship, I should say. And as a matter of fact, we're trying to strengthen that relationship. We're trying to go even further. Um, the principal of St. Mark's Sec is on the executive team of Momentum Track and Field.
Okay.
Yes, so the school has a representative. And if I should just stick on that for a bit, when we started this club, we thought that it was necessary in order to have longevity. We ought to have persons within the school. In order for this to be consistent, we must have persons within the schools, whether it be the principal or teachers that is on board with the whole vision, that is on board with the process and so on that we hope to achieve. So yes, we have a good relationship. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting just last Wednesday with the sports committee at the school and some parents, yeah, because we cannot do this by ourselves. We believe that in order to be successful at this, we have to have the parents on board, we have to have the school on board, we have to have all the stakeholders on board. As I said, we have a good relationship, but we want to strengthen it and we want to go even further with it.
And if I can add on that, Michael, if I could add something else, even with that, what is the can there be a challenge with kids in the parish going outside to other secondary schools? Is the plan for these athletes to stay in the parish and try to go to to St. Mark's, or you're hoping that they would leave and go elsewhere? Is that part of the plan as well? Hoping that they will stay in the parish and stay there to school?
That is part of the plan. And as you speak on that, as you mentioned that, this is one of the challenges that we are having presently, um, whereby we cannot dictate to a parent, for example, where he or she should send the child. Our hope is that if a child is training with us from the primary school level, then we would try our best, to try to persuade or to try to let that parent see how important it is to send that child to St. Mark's Secondary in order for what we've started to continue. Yeah. But I think we've had cases already where that has proven to be a challenge. Yeah. And I think that was one of the main reasons. That was one of the reasons why we also started this club, because we realized over the years that some of our boarding athletes, whenever they finish the primary school and they're talented, you find the schools in the neighboring parishes and so on wanting to grab a hold of them. Yeah, so we trying our best, to see how we can manage that as much as possible. And this is why we have the club, and we're trying to show them that we know have something. So please, it's
I,
important that we stay here in the parish and let's
let me
develop what we have.
let me tell you what it is, Denver. Rudian is onto something. St. Patrick doesn't have a club. So what he's basically telling you is that in the event that St. Patrick forms a club, our club is formed, that they may want to go over there because it's right there. And I mean, it's interesting because we've seen the formations of these clubs and Barrett except St. Patrick. So I assume at some point they will be pushed to that. So then athletes will definitely, what Rudel is saying is that athletes will have choices now, right?
Of course.
And they will be free now. For example, when at once upon a time, everyone wanted to go at one particular club in St. George's, for example. There's so many clubs now that you're free to move from one to the other, right?
Yes.
And that's what happened. And I think coaches, by and large in Grenada, they understand, right? Probably once upon a time, you were very, guarded with your athletes and things like that. So, but now it's almost competitive, and athletes
Yes.
are free to go. But
Of course. Yes.
what would you say is your philosophy when working with young athletes, and how do you basically motivate athletes from a small parish as St. Mark, for example, to believe that they can compete at a higher level, national, in terms of primary school and intercall, and even regionally at the Curved Games? How do you motivate them to let them know that they have the talent and they can compete at the highest level?
This is in fact is one of the most challenging things that we've had to do. As a child, if you're competing on a 200 meters track, for example, and then you go down to the national stadium where you realize, hey, this track is much more bigger, than you would know that it has an effect on you psychologically. As a matter of fact, that's what has been happening to many of our athletes in the parish of St. Mark's over the years. They tend to get frightened, whenever they visit the national stadium. So our job, what we try to do as much as possible, is to have talks with them, pep talks and so on, helping them to see the bigger picture. That yes, the track is bigger, but if you're running at 200 meters in Victoria, then it's still at 200 meters in the national stadium. If you're running at 400 in Victoria, yes, you might make 2 laps, whereas in the national stadium, it's 1. So we try to focus on the distance really does not change. Yes, your technique and so on, the curve and all those things might come into play. We try to motivate them along that line and to make them see that, they're talented. Yeah. With the training, once they're consistent at training, we try to stress that to them, then they can compete, with any other athlete in any other club or in any other parish in St. Mark's, and also move on to the regional or even international level.
Yeah, you can probably let them know that treat it as if they're running indoors, because the
Right.
indoor is a 200-meter track,
Right.
And, yeah. But how do the limited facilities impact training, and how do you work around those challenges? Because certainly, unlike other clubs that may have the use of one, probably the Kirani James Athletic Stadium, or a larger facility, right?
Mhm.
How that in its case, and you even talk about equipment, for example. So as a new club, and with these sort of limitations, how do you work around those sort of challenges?
Well, it's obviously difficult because you might have cases where, for example, um, football is playing, or you have the footballers training, and if football is playing, then obviously we can't use the track unless we're using the outside of the football field, as opposed to other parishes, as you rightly mentioned. If football is playing, in Progress Park and those bigger parks, then the track is still available. But that's not the case with Victoria. So in most cases, what will happen is that we have to adjust our training sessions. We might have to use the pavilion in some cases, or depending on where we are this season, we have to use the road, or we might have to use the outside of the field, or we might have to make certain agreements or certain arrangements with the other guys, just so that we can, be able to use the park adequately enough, or to achieve what we really want to achieve. But it is a challenge, it's a challenge, and we try our best to get around that.
So, what kind of support do you need from government or the private sector to take momentum to the next level?
Well, we have needs. I mean, being a newly formed club, obviously, there are things that we would want in terms of hurdles, for example, starting blocks and those things, would make things even more better for us. Things that would aid in the further development of athletics in the parish. We understand that there is not a bigger park available in the parish. If that was an option that was easily fetched, then probably would have gone that route. But we don't have that option right now, and of course, we have had support. If I should mention, when it comes to spikes and so on, running gears, we've had tremendous support from persons. If I should mention, Miss Karen Pilgrim, we call her the mother of momentum. She and her team, they have worked and have been working tirelessly. They have donated over 30 something pairs of spikes, to the club. And, we've had cases where, for example, our first set of uniform we had was donated to us by a parliamentary representative for St. Mark, Dr. Clarice Modest Cohen. We've had support from the Ministry of Sports, also where uniform is concerned. I think what we also need now is running shoes, because oftentimes you have our athletes coming with their school shoes, and we don't want them to damage their school shoe, because obviously we believe the education, the academic part of things is also important. So we need support in that area.
You try to be a bit modest, at times. At times, you try to get folks to say exactly what it is, what you need. I mean, Rudian, for example, does not hold back. He's from the parish of St. Patrick, and he does not hold back to say it's time for St. Patrick. He feels a bit jaded when we have the folks from other parishes every week. We're doing grassroots, and we have folks from St. David, we have from St. Andrews, we had from St. John's, and just no one from St. Patrick to really come forward and say, hey, even an initiative, even to say, well, we considering, or we have started discussions, or something like that. So I could understand. So that's why I'm saying when you folks are speaking, be bold, say it as it is. Someone may just be listening and say, hey, they deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that is part of it. As you said, I was a bit modest, there, but we obviously need support when it comes to training and so on, coaches, persons to assist with the field events, for example. We're at a point where we don't have anybody to really work with our athletes where the field events, are concerned. So this is really a need. And we really want to pay more focus on the field event, because mostly what we do is on the track. I think other parishes, they have that edge over us. As I said earlier, we don't have a high jump mat, for example. We don't have a sand pit, I guess, all because of the size of the park and so on. Whereas other parishes, they are blessed, with those things. Yeah. So as much as possible, being a young club and myself being inexperienced in the area of coaching, and also the other guys I should mention, it's not just myself. We also have Mr. Shomai Jeffrey and Mr. Akim Philip, who also does coaching together with me. So, as much as possible, if we can get support with that is concerned, persons to, to have sessions and so on, with us, to help us to further develop our craft. I think, we welcome that.
I like the idea of you requesting assistance. Even though it's a new club, you outline your inexperience so that you're willing to work along with others who will have experience in other areas. But by the way, if you're listening and you intend or you have intentions of assisting, please assist. You're not going there to take over, right? There's a tendency of people who, they mean well, I think so, but at times they do the opposite.
Overboard.
So here is an initiative, and he's welcoming folks to come on board to assist, not to come and dictate and to take over, right? And I like that appeal, because, as you say, the focus now is on track, but also field is very important, because, for example, the throws, particularly, let's say the discus, the shot put, you don't need, a 400-meter track. You understand? For that, you just need a throwing area. I mean, the javelin may be a bit more, right? High jump and long jump for the time being, things that can be done probably on the beach, just to develop those sort of things. Huddling, for example, can still be done in a 200-meter track, these sort of things, because you just need a runway, most likely, and things like that. So there are things that could be done. And right now, as you said, you need some assistance in material as well, financial as well, because, these things have a cost as well. And if there are those who are willing to assist with little expertise and things like that, so please contact Momentum Track and Field, and in any way you can assist. They have a lot of folks who would have moved on from the communities, living overseas, whatever it is like that. So that may be willing to assist, might be willing to probably even pass on a program to you. Because I'm certain if you get a program and you can follow the program, most coaches, that's what they can do. They can, hey, I get a program from a coach and I'm just following the program, and it probably will work. These are the sort of things that I know will make a difference, and I'm certain that if folks are willing to, and you'll be receptive of it.
Of course, definitely.
All right. So,
Michael, I also think one of the key things too is When I listen to you compared to the other parishes, you really need the financial support right now, because what the financial support can do is getting the kids to maybe go to the for recreation ground on a day when there might be football game when you could use the field. So it's not only just to stay, but it's also could you can travel out too at the same time and go other places that is close by. To
Uh,
put them up on a bus and then get them there for an hour, 2 hours, and then take them back home. So that's also I definitely see that. Yeah.
And in addition to that, to even subsidize for participating in other meets, for example, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Whitsuntide, all these sort of things. And by the way, folks, when you talk about competing with football, you have to consider football is
Yeah.
big in the parish of St. Mark's, right?
Very
Um,
much so.
yeah, so there's a big following for football.
Yeah.
You'll probably see more folks at the park for football than probably
Anything
sports or
else?
something like that. So
Yeah. And
that's
then
really
people have to also see if you give a real good picture of where you're located inside of Victoria. People don't see that because people don't know. They haven't been there, so they don't
Right.
have a clue what it like. You go in there is like you said, the river and then houses is around there, so you're kind of locked in, right? So there's you're in there. I've been there a few times, and it's like a football game, and it's like, my goodness, how do you guys do it? How do you do it? But certainly people have to see that there is really a need. Like, listen, even if St. Patrick's not a club, you guys need is so much way more than any other parish, because of the need is a real need, you know, because of the circumstances of what you guys have. It's only one field, it's only one thing. So the need is really, really, really important there to help you guys. So definitely, there is nowhere else to put a stadium or a track or a field. There's nowhere else. Like other parishes, yes, you can, but in St. Mark, there's nothing. You got to get rid of some houses and so forth to do that,
probably.
right?
Let me get some comments, and then Theo has been she's saying send them to SAS. That's Theo's comment there, and then so, yes, I have you laughing, yes, because I know you must jam a little SAS in it. She says, Mr. Welch, I know we have sports, track and field, cricket, football in our blood. My dad is a Welch, and my granddad, Albert Welch, is from the lands in Guelph. So she is, um, that's family, it appears, at Intercall. St. Mark's Secondary School always have a good athlete at Intercall, yeah. And that's a fact, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, always, always.
Always, there's always someone from
If
St.
it's
Mark's.
if it's one,
Yeah,
if it's
it may not,
oneself, and
yeah,
that's
it
from
may not,
since from my days going to school in Magan
may not,
College. If it's one, they
yeah.
have one.
They
They
will
have
not.
one. Yeah,
They will not
yeah.
win into call, but at least they will have a
We have
standout.
some. Yeah.
They have
Yeah,
a challenge. They have a
they
challenge.
will have a
Yeah.
standout.
Mhm.
Quincy Britton say, "Hi, Senator. Good afternoon to you as well. Thank you, Mr. Bascom, for the exposure given to momentum. Keep up the good work, Mr. Welch and the team. In a while, I'll give you the opportunity to probably think about the entire team. Big up the entire team. Um, Marcia Frederick, my daughter, whole coach. Thank you for the work you put into Micaiah. We see you and we appreciate you. Give me a correct pronunciation of the name.
Micaiah.
Micaiah.
Micaiah
Yes.
Frederick. Yes.
Micaiah Frederick. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Micaiah, right? Micaiah Frederick. That's another name that we have been hearing a lot about. So folks, remember
Yes.
that. So that's I think Marcia is Micaiah's mom, right?
Yes. Yes.
Good afternoon to you, Marcia. Um, she says, I love TalkSports. You guys make my afternoon, my Saturday afternoon. Yes, dear, we do. Um, um, Desaline Johnson. We have great athletes in Grenada with tremendous potential of making it big on the international level. However, we and the power at B don't see or fail to treat sports as the multi-million dollar business. I will say multi-billion, right? Just to
Mhm.
go a little further. Sports is not million again, it's billion. So as a result, we fail to adequately invest in our athletes. If it was not for the clubs, athletics wouldn't be where it is today. Yet still we have the school still trying to fight down the clubs in regards to the athletes running for the clubs, all because they are getting. This is something that we have been talking about time after time. And that's why I think Rudian asked you earlier about the relationship between the club and the school, because
School.
some of the
Yep.
clubs we have had that sort of tension, even though we believe it has now been sort of fizzled out to an extent, right? It
Yes.
has not been public as it has been probably for the past 2 3 years, that friction between, but I think they're now realizing the importance of the clubs, right?
Of course.
And Theo is saying I could already feel Intercore 2027 is going to be good, massive, a movie. I can't wait. We can't wait. Theo. On this big track and field week in the USA, wishing our boys from GBS all the best at the Penn Relays. That will be next weekend. Anwell says, I agree with you. I have a grandson coming up from FGS Primary School. What's FGS? First FGS Primary School. I think that's the name of it. That's a primary school. I think.
It has to be.
Yeah, it's a primary school. I think she put the little acronym for it. But certainly, yes, I can't wait either. Right? Yeah. But the point Desaline made, and which I think is very, very important, and has to do specifically with that sort of relationship with our, you know, schools. And I think it's one of our polls this week where we ask the question: are schools doing enough to support grassroots athletics? Yes, no, somewhat, not sure. These are the things that sometimes we have to ask ourselves, because we have seen where, time after time, people have been complaining about the relationship between the schools and the clubs, and not understanding the important role that the clubs are playing now, in terms of the development. Barring they do not have the resources as a school, mind you, they do not have the resources as a school, but they are playing a very important part in the development, because when it comes to intercall, most of the students, athletes, somehow are aligned to a club.
A club, yes. Mm-hmm.
Because, and you can talk about that, Denva, that clubs basically have a all year round program, whereas the school, don't. And when the students are on leave, on vacation, there's still the clubs there that have their programs ongoing. And then when they come back to school, that the club would have played that role in terms of keeping the athletes in shape and all these sort of things. So please reiterate the importance of the clubs, one, and the importance of schools working along with clubs.
Yes, definitely. I think over the years, persons, probably don't or did not understand, because you would hear, for example, persons making statements that school don't have an athletics program, or they don't have a coach, for example, all because, for example, they would see a particular school performing well, or the athletes in a particular school performing, well, and they take it that, it is because of the school, and really and truly, this is not the case. In most cases, what you find happening is that those athletes have been performing well is because they have been consistently training with the clubs. Even as you rightly said, during the vacation period, there is no school. Which teacher, for example, would be there, training athletes during the vacation. It's really the clubs that carry the blunt of the weight when it comes to the training, when it comes to the general preparation of the athletes. So there is no way at all we can neglect that fact, and there is no way at all we can live out the role and the importance of having a good relationship with the clubs. Probably we're blessed in that we're just one school. We don't have so many schools as the other parishes, so we may not have so many friction. Added to that, I went to St. Mark's Secondary School, for example. I taught at St. Mark's Secondary School. I taught at Samaritan Presbyterian. I taught at Bonnet Government School. So I understand pretty much, about the culture
So,
of
so
each of these institutions.
you are a real St. Mark's boy, Everything is St. Mark's.
Yes, yes.
By the way, just getting back, Quincy let us know that FGS is Florida Government School, right?
Right.
Florida Government School. I think it's in Loretto, right?
Yes, yes.
So yeah, so that's just a thing. But so your roots to St. Mark's, so you
Definitely.
understand, as they'll say, the
Rooted in
culture
St.
of
Mark's.
St. Mark's, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So I think that, that in itself, it gives me a bit of a leverage, if I should say. And of course, I have good relationships. Even the other coaches, the other guys, in the club, we have, very good relationship with generally the teachers and the principal in those schools. So, I think we're privileged, in that sense. So hopefully we should not have so much of an issue or issues where those things are concerned.
Yeah. And Marcia
Yes.
says, thank you, Mr. Bascom. I appreciate. Keep up the good work. It's a wonderful program, certainly. And continue, Marcia, with Micaiah and others. The parents, they have an important role to play, right?
Definitely.
And the support they give, like you, Marcia, and others give to your kids, that will makes or breaks, I would say, the club, right? Because it's very important to ensure that they remain focused, they remain disciplined. And, the club, by the way, people don't understand, their participation in the clubs helps in a way in terms of societal problems, issues, right? Yeah. Getting them to participate in the clubs. It's taking them away from, whether it's boys or girls, taking them away from some of the ills of society.
Distractions.
So, yes, definitely. So the parents have a very important role to ensure that they continue to be a part of it. And at times, if it's possible, to give them that support. We see that in swimming, Rudy, and we have spoken about it many a times. Why, when it comes to swimming, we have so many parents. They are the ones who are the spectators more than ever, right? They bring out the entire family just to see. They may have one swimmer from the family, but they bring in mommy, daddy, the aunts, the kids, granny, everyone to support. That is what we want to see in other sporting disciplines,
Precisely.
whether it's track and field, because it motivates, it inspires, the athletes themselves. St. David's Catholic Secondary School, through Trailblazers, for example, that was fundamental for them in their development. They had a very strong base. Even now, they still have that sort of foundation where the whole of St. David, even though there are two secondary schools there, but they come out to support their athletes,
Right.
Yeah, and that to me is very important. Ron and Maria says no schools are not doing enough to support the athletes and the clubs. Dessalene Johnson, you hit the nail on the head. Yes, so we have the poll up that's talking about the schools and whether or not the schools are doing enough. And she is saying that schools are not doing enough. So there are people who believe that schools should do a little more. All the athletes who are performing at a high level are because they are training at the club level. That's a fact. There is no dispute. I don't think there is any athlete who is competing at the school level, who is at that, performing at that level, who is not attached to a club. Yeah, there is. Theo is saying, my 2-year-old grandson already running. He won 3 medals in sports. I'm looking forward to see him get better. Well, yes, good to you. Very encouraging and much respect to Mr. Welch and his work with Momentum Track Club. It takes courage and a lot to develop and run a program with limited resource and still be so committed. Many times you see coaches emerging when the athletes have arrived, but obviously Mr. Welch and his team care about athletes from St. Mark's and is putting work and supporting the athletes from the ground up. That's highly respectable. And yes, to the extent that you said that there's a void, and you acknowledge that you're not experienced enough, but at least you have some knowledge, and that's a start. And
Right.
the only thing that can happen from here on is for you to grow and develop, because every coach started at some level, right? They started somewhere, and through that development, they were able to grow and get the experience. Last week we had um, Gary James,
Yes.
and Gary was basically saying the same thing. He yes, he had his experience as probably as a physical education student back in Cuba, but in terms of starting as a coach per se, he's fairly he acknowledged that he was green,
It's
but
good.
through that you move. Paul Philip will tell you the same thing. He started somewhere and he moved to the next level. Lee Coffey will tell you the same thing. They all started somewhere.
Right.
And after a period of time, they would have grown because they would have been exposed to programs, they would have been exposed to training, they would have been exposed to others with some level of experience that can pass on vital and crucial information to them. And again, I'm saying, if anyone has a program and believe that they can pass on a program to you and to the club per se, I'm certain you'll be receptive of it and you'll be able to communicate with them, because we do have a lot of coaches who are out there in the diaspora who are coaching athletes who are at colleges, etc. And I'm certain they'll want to assist. The parents need to support their children and clubs and the schools. The coaches too need to play a lead role in the athlete's life in producing a holistic child. And Theo says, sports bring joy, love, and peace, etc. Something about sports bring out the joy in me. Not you alone, not you alone. I don't know how people. I have spoken to people who say,
I like sports.
I don't like sports, and I watch them in a kind of way. Sports. I mean,
How is that possible?
especially in a time like now with all this upheaval and thing, I switch off. I mean, as someone who has grown up in the media, I switch off news and turn to sports. On weekends, it has to be a breaking story that will get my attention in terms of news, because it's sports until probably Monday morning, right? And Monday morning, I'll still probably try to catch up on what I missed, right? I don't know how people can't. I mean, what's his name? The late Nelson Mandela once said that sports is a unifying brand, you can use sports to unify the world. Through sports, you can unify the world. Countries will be at war, but when it comes to sports, they compete against each other.
What is happening? Yes.
Yeah. Promising, I would say not great. Young, smart, Annalisa and George should be placed in protective custody if we expect Grenada to maintain this unique status again without sounding. We'll get to that. We trying to stay with the the St. Mark's, because they don't really get the opportunity to talk a bit. And certainly Clev is making a point in terms of keeping athletes, into a program and, a sort of structure. But importantly enough, we trying to see how athletes, especially from those rural parishes and newly formed clubs, we can ensure that they develop and move to the next level. So what role do clubs like Momentum play in strengthening, you think, strengthening the national program? Everyone has a role to play, but what role do you believe your club can play in strengthening the national program? Denver?
Well, I believe we have a critical role to play. despite the fact that we're coming from a parish, a smaller parish that is not so exposed when it comes to track and field in Grenada. I think it allows for us to reach even more athletes. Yeah, because oftentimes you find that the programs and so on, they're generally focused on the bigger parishes, where obviously you have the bigger pool, and so on. You have the more experienced coaches and all of those factors. I think what it allows us to do as a nation, or the general program, it allows for us to reach, athletes, at a grassroots level in the smaller parishes, who in most cases may have been lost through the cracks because they were not reached, because the opportunity was not there, for them. As a matter of fact, now that we're competing in some of the national meets, what we're doing is exposing our athletes so that persons know that, hey, St. Mark's has talent also, the western side has talent, and of course we have, athletes that are able to match up, with athletes in any other club or any other parish in Grenada. So it does give us that opportunity. It does strengthen the national program, if I should say that, by exposing, athletics and making it a bit more far-reached.
And as Clev rightly said, so that when you identify your athletes, and he made reference to like Annalisa Brown and others. So in that case, Micaiah Frederick and others, how you ensure that they are placed in a structured program, to ensure that we really exploit the true potential of the athletes, and we can see them move from one stage to the other. So where do you see momentum track and field in the next probably 3 to 5 years? I know you keep saying it's very new, young, and things like that. So, but what legacy do you hope to leave through your work also in St. Mark? I mean, I know it's pretty early to say that, but starting with in terms of momentum track and field in the next probably 3 to 5 years, where do you want to see it move?
Well, obviously, I want to see more athletes being given the opportunity. I want to see more athletes given the recognition. Yeah. I want to see more athletes, for example, I shouldn't say that's our general aim. Yeah. Myself and the team, the other coaches, Shamai Jeffrey and Mr. Akim Philip, we want to see more athletes being able to, for example, make it to the Carifta team. I think Makaya's stint on the Carifta team was something that that we obviously were really proud of. Yeah, to know that somebody from St. Mark's, we haven't seen that in a while, was able to get selected to the Carifta team to represent Grenada. I think we want to be able to see more of that happening in the future, and of course being able to perform, being able to stand the authority in intercall and generally the other meets, the national champs and so on. So we want to be able to give our athletes and more of our athletes exposure out there.
A very interesting comment from Desaline Johnson says it is counterproductivity for the school to be fighting with the clubs. It doesn't help our athletes flourish in the sports of athletics. A great amount of athletes who went into the intercall games, and even Carifta with so much stress, because some schools will stress those athletes, well, they say, stress those athletes out because they were training with the clubs for intercall and Carifta. It is crazy what's happening in athletics in Grenada. We have come a long way, but we have some adjustments to make. Desaline seems to be onto something there, and certainly it's something we probably can explore. But it appears that maybe some corroboration with what is being said there in terms of the athletes, having the intercall, the Carifta games, and quite a bit, but probably a need for a postmortem on after the athletic season, on what needs to be done going forward. Kwame, if you're listening, it's something probably the Athletics Association can probably, you know, initiate in ensuring that come 2027, not that the Athletics Association can dictate, but they can make suggestions, on how best schools and clubs, because we've seen a flourishing of the sport in Grenada now. So now is the best time to ensure that there's synergy. There's even a policy. Well, if
Right.
they say so, but there's synergy. So to ensure that the clubs and the schools work together, because when, for example, when St. Patrick bust onto the scene with their club, and and things like that. So then you'll be having more clubs and things like that. So it's important that we take some of these concerns very serious, because we don't want a situation whereas you looking 3 to 5 years, you're looking at how your club will be, but then the base of your club are the athletes. And if the athletes, as Dessalines is saying, some of them have been stressed out because of the pressure from some of the schools, etc., etc., then we'll find that probably some clubs may no longer be able to to flourish, to function.
Right.
So we need to ensure that for the sustainability of the clubs and for the track, for the sport in particular, that they work it out. Clubs may take it on their own and probably approach the schools and walk along with the schools. We've seen, for example, with the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School, when Coach Simon, that Ajit Simon came on, he spoke about that synergy between his club and the school. In that case, he is the coach of the club and the coach of the school.
Right.
Yeah, so that in itself is working out. What may happen at some point is if there is some sort of breakup in terms of the relationship, But as it is now, we've seen that they're working together. Others may not be the same, so we want to ensure that. Coach Lee Coffey, good afternoon to you. Say congratulations, Mr. Welsh. I commend you and your team of coaches' efforts in nurturing talents in the parish of St. Mark, being left on the back burner for many years. That's many years, Coach Lee Coffey. Look out, boy. By the way, Coach Lee Coffey, anytime you're ready, just let Coach Welsh know, and he can probably have the clubs can have, and that's something we have been talking about, Rudy, and invitational, Denva Welsh can put on a meeting thing and invite a couple clubs, select events, for example, a few events, and you can have it probably, within a 4 or 5 hour window. So you have select events. You're not running a full program. But what you're doing, and we keep saying that, you're giving the athletes additional competition. So, for example, you have your meet and you decide that for the club, you have limitations. So you can say we may not be able to field all these athletes in all these events. So you factor in those things and you prepare your meet to suit, because you don't want to be the home club and you're not competing in as particular event, and things like that. So you may say, okay, we have a 100, a 200, probably a 800, because we may not have the 400, athletes for the 400, and of course you want to have the relays and things like that. So, but these things, I'm certain you invite Lee's club, you invite Ajit's club, you invite another, probably 4 or 5 clubs, and you say, hey, come, let's have some fun. It's just a meet among ourselves, and things like that, and it certainly giving your athletes the opportunity. And that's something I'm throwing out to all the clubs. You don't have to wait until a national championships or this. Give your athletes. Your comment?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, these are things that we've started doing. We have already started moving in that direction. The relay meet that we had recently on the 28th of March. This year was the second year that we did it. We invited schools in the neighboring parishes, because most so as we agreed, St. Patrick's don't have a club, so we invited the primary schools and they came to Victoria, and they competed together with schools in St. John's, and we had a pretty nice competition. So that's the direction we head in, because we obviously we have to create opportunities for athletes. We have to give them competition. The more they compete, obviously, it is the better. So, it's fresh, it's something new, and in years to come, we intend, we want to get this thing even bigger and better. So, you're going to find that we'll be inviting coaches that like Coach Lee and Mr. Simon, and all the other coaches, in the future. But obviously, that's the direction that we're heading.
Mm-hmm. Don't forget, yes, Coach James, right next door to you.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely. You
you
can't forget
want to be.
Coach James.
Beyond athletics, how is momentum impacting the youth in St. Mark socially and personally? Because sometimes we only think about the athletes competing, but obviously, and especially when we have athletes coming from the rural parishes, they look at it as a sort of disadvantage, social disadvantage, and all these sort of things. So how you see momentum impacting the youth in your parish, socially as well as personally?
Momentum, we play a critical role in terms of social development of the youths. As was said earlier, it gives them an opportunity to engage themselves in something positive. Yeah. So that, for example, after school, instead of getting yourselves involved in something negative or going and sit down, probably on the block or so on, it provides an avenue for you to utilize your talent, yeah, in something that can obviously help you in the future. And not just that, I think it impacts obviously the community in general, in that they know, seeing that at least in St. Mark's, that they're talented and they deserve a chance, they deserve an opportunity, they deserve to be taken serious. I think the pride and so on, over the last couple of years, where athletics is concerned, has been on the rise because of what this club has been doing, because of what the athletes have been doing, because of the recognition that the club has been getting, over the last year or so. I think, there's a new interest, there's a new wave of when it comes to athletics in the parish. Persons are now coming on board, and pledging their support. Yeah. So I think, that goes a long way. You find that persons' parents are now, wanting the child to be a part of the program. And I'm even wondering how is it that we're going to facilitate all of these athletes, for example, coming up, because we spoke about the space and all those things. So there's a heightened interest, if I should say that, when it comes to athletics in St. Mark.
Okay,
So
but Deseline Johnson is saying that the business community in Grenada have some licks to get. In my opinion, they are not doing enough to support sports in Grenada. Supporting sports, for example, a young club like Momentum. Why haven't a business company haven't sponsored them yet? Many of our businesses in Grenada don't have far-reaching ideas or vision to grow their business. So she's looking like, most likely, a corporate sponsored, Momentum Track and Field Club. And because, sometimes we hear about them and that's something I always have problems with. They try to come onto the scene after the athletes have made their mark.
Precisely.
And, they don't try to get involved with the development aspect of it. Hey, this is an athlete. We start calling his or her name very early. And not until they probably win a medal or they this, that, then everyone wants to start giving them this, that, and the other. And hopefully we do that. Rudian, before I take you, Nicholas Benjamin is saying, boss, you're doing a good job. Just continue, bro. It's hard doing it but the kids will benefit in the long run. That's Nicholas Benjamin, one of the coaches of the Grenada Boys Secondary School. Rudian?
Yeah, certainly. Coach, I just want to thank you again, for, certainly for coming on. But I asked the question earlier on. I know there's been a few things in terms of relationship with the school because I think sometimes we forget when we talk about intercol, it's school sports. It's
Right.
not club sports, and I think sometimes we forget that very very important part of it is school. It is important for coaches outside to have good relationship with the school because you're learning basic thing with the kids because when you start coaching it's not about track and field, you're teaching them day-to-day life through sports,
True.
teaching them how to be a man, how to be a woman, how to respect themselves, how to behave through sports. And certainly when teachers out here with the students that I coach here in Canada, the teachers call me on the phone and say, this person is not doing good in the class. We have that relationship because then if they're not doing good in school, they can't compete.
Right.
That's just the bottom line. And parents get involved and say, well, they're not coming to practice anymore because they're not doing it good in school. So that's why it's teaching them the importance through sports life skills. Because they may not be an Olympian or a world champion one day, but certainly they could be a doctor, and through that they become a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, a prime minister. Those are the things, and through sports and through what you're doing, help them become that. So and though I get, I listen to some saying that schools, have to be more involved and see what the schools and its own has so much going on already. So there's a debate on that, right? I mean, we love sports, so yeah, we're gonna come out and say, schools should be involved more and so forth. But schools on its own have so much going on already, and it's not only track and field they have. They got the
Right.
netball, they got the football, they got the bat. They have other sports in it. Yes, and we do understand the teachers do not have the qualification in terms of coaching at a higher level. That we understand, and that's where the club comes in. So it is good to have that relationship with the school, but they understand it's school first, and
And
I
what
and I, and I think sometimes
and
we tend to forget that. Yeah.
what has been the response from the parents and the wider community regarding momentum track and field?
Oh well, I mean, I'm glad you asked because I mean, I can't leave here without bigging up the parents that we have on board.
Yeah.
I think the support that we have been receiving from the parents have been tremendous. You know, they have been, supporting when it comes to fundraisers and, preparing, the meals and all those things to ensure that they at least have something to eat whenever we travel to meets, planning things in terms of, what do we do to raise funds, etc. These parents, we have a body really and truly that takes care of that aspect. And I think, they have been really supportive. And I want to commend them on that. I want to big them up. Momentum track and field parents.
No, certainly that is so important because, like I said, even as a coach, your job you want to coach, and you don't want to be the one going to fundraise at the same time. So having those personnel, having those parents especially coming on board and playing their role, that is so good, and it helps you a whole lot. A lot more than most people think. So that I commend, the parents from the club as well for that. Just certainly again, just continue doing the good job that you guys are doing. um, we will hear about St. Mark's. St. Mark's will grow. We will hear of this club in
Yes,
time to come.
yes,
We will hear
that's
about
the
you
idea.
guys. And don't feel that, like I said, you're lacking in some things to make it difficult. When there's a will, there is a way, and you started it by starting this, and it will be successful. And just believe in the young athletes, and once they believe in you, you're going to see great things coming from them, and then they might want to go to McDonald College after that. So we're just just leave that
Would
there.
you, coach? Would you like to see a national club championships in Grenada? Championships just for the clubs. I mean, we have the national championships, but clubs and schools. But would you, with so many clubs now in Grenada, would you like to see a national club championships?
Yes, I mean, I think that is something that should be exciting, something that should be interesting. As you rightly said, there's a lot of clubs in Grenada, at this point, and I think something like that could further increase or further increase athletes' participation in athletics. I think we could go on to further identify potential athletes that would even move on to being, top regional or international athletes. So, I mean, I think it's a great idea, and it's something I welcome, and something that we would look forward to in the future once it becomes something that is done. But I like the idea and I support the idea.
Yeah. Well, we have athletes in competition this weekend. Quite a few of those athletes in competition because this weekend, as you know, athletes, especially at the college level in particular, and then the next weekend we have the pen relays, pen, and then we have other championships taking place. Also, we have our women footballers. They taking on Bermuda this evening in Hamilton. That's in Bermuda, CONCACAF Women's Football. And outside of that, we heard of Enel St. Bernard. We had Enel on our program, a basketballer, Grenadian basketball in the NCAA. Well, it's now official that he has declared his intention to sign with Sam Houston University, a NCAA Division I college. In terms of his college career, and certainly we'll have more information about that during the course of the week or whenever the official announcement with all the details are made by Sam Houston University. But Enel St. Bernard, a homebred basketballer. And again, Rudy, and when we have to take a bow at times because we give exposure, we give opportunity for these young talents to be on our program, to speak and things like that. So we're not waiting until they make it big, and things like that. So thanks to Karen Batiste and the Karen Batiste Foundation Inc. for providing us with that opportunity from our early stage. And then the breaking news this week in terms of World Athletics Allegiance ruling. I don't know what you guys think about that, but certainly it was a bit hard, especially for the Jamaicans, because they had quite a few of their top athletes. I don't know who are the winners and the losers of that, because it's sort of unprecedented, in terms of normally you will have where athletes will, serve their time of what we call their, they will probably meet the requirements, meaning that you will have an intent to participate for another country, switch of allegiance, and there's a period of time where you do not represent, a certain country to make way for you. Once that requirement is met, normally, except something happens between that time in terms of doping ban, all these sort of things. So it's normally a process. It's unprecedented this time around that what that decision, and it came as a surprise for many. Others have been rejoicing because they believe it was the Jamaicans. But that doesn't mean that the athletes will represent Jamaica in any event, So it's kind of bittersweet. I don't know what folks think about it, but certainly, it's a bit tough. The deputy in the St. Parents, especially mothers and female guardians, are the backbone of sports clubs and the Steel Van movement. St. Vincent has an event where they honor and recognize pan parents. Shama Jeffrey was from St. Mark's and came to the GBSS. Send them down. St. Mark's is small, but top performances came from there and will continue. And could you imagine? Shama Jeffrey,
it's okay. We're going to send them up.
Jeffrey is part of the momentum mix, right?
Exactly.
Yes. He came from St. Mark's, he went to the GBSS, performed at the GBSS, excelled at the GBSS, and now
And
contributing.
is now
Yeah,
in cinema.
it's in
Yes.
math. Yes, so certainly. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Oh, it's going to the best sports talk show. Hey, Enel, good afternoon to you, Enel. And Enel is there with us. Um, Good move, Enel, and we hope to hear from you
So
when you.
it's a phenomenal school. Yeah,
Yes, from
it's
Houston.
a
So
phenomenal school.
we
Yeah,
expect good things
yeah,
from you and that. So Enel is
yeah.
definitely on with us, and looking forward to hear from Enel once he settles down and everything is okay. Yeah, I don't understand why World Athletics threw themselves into this. Leave the athletes alone.
Alone, I agree. I agree with you, Deputy. I agree with you. Very disappointed, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I somehow, I still trying to read into everything about that because, as I said, it came as a surprise. Others would say, hey,
Yeah.
you know, I think it was a good move and this, that. And I think it's more emotional and sentimental than looking at the real facts. Yes, they would have believed that Turkey, um, was using, big bucks, but a
Yeah.
lot of countries do it.
Of
The,
course.
the great
Mhm.
USA does it. Your
Yeah,
homeland, Rudy, and Canada does it.
all the time
In various sports. I mean,
in
look
various
at
sports. People
USA
look.
and Canada in terms of cricket.
Yep.
All the names are Indians and
Right.
Pakistanis and whatever, so it happens in other sports. So I don't know why
You see it everywhere. Yeah.
athletics is getting
And
involved.
the disappointing part is a lot of these athletes is not leaving because of they want to go somewhere to run better or run faster. They are leaving because their federation haven't been taking care of them. They're not
Yeah.
leaving because of anything else. They're leaving because of the federation. And I think that's what hurt the most is the federation that should be looking out for them haven't been taking care of them. So, when that happened at that level, you go and find greener pastures. And that's why I don't know why World Athletics is coming in
Yeah,
there and getting
yeah.
involved. But I'm going to say this, Michael. They
There
may not
must be a
like it.
reason. There must be a reason for
I,
the
I,
athletes to go. We
I'm
get
going to
that.
say this, Michael. They may not like it. They might call us out again. The J trees have something to do with it. And
Yeah.
that's my take.
Well,
That's my take.
the federation.
And
Yeah.
we have seen it,
I
the
mean,
federation. And that's
the,
my take. I
the
can be
federation.
wrong, but I believe they do.
The federation threw up
That's
the
my
white
take.
flag early, 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 saying they had
Early,
nothing,
very early.
right?
Yeah, they threw it out too early. They pulled that too early for me. Um, but that's really what it is. It was something, and the whole rule is very confusing because
Well,
it's still there. And yes, you can transfer. It's not that you cannot transfer. But now they say one female, one male in a cycle and all this. It's not that you cannot do it. You can still do it, but now they just put in stipulation onto it. So
yeah, yeah. And I
that's
think,
just
and
what
I
it
think,
is. Yeah.
and I think they added other countries, other athletes from other
Hmm.
countries, just to make it look
Yeah.
as if it's not
To
just,
make it look like it's
not
not
just.
just, understand?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Here it is. Rona Maria says coaches need to work together to build athletes effectively. Each coach brings unique strengths. For example, Coach Paul and Coach Benjamin may excel in field events, Coach Lee and Coach Cato in sprints and middle distance, and Coach Charles in long distance, while Coach Benjamin also contributes in strength training. With this in mind, there should be a system that allows for the exchange of athletes based on their specific needs. This collaborative approach ensures that every athlete benefits. What do you think about that collaboration with the coaches? Rudy, and I see you shaking your head, but in a small in a small Grenada setting, coaches collaborating in terms of and in the case of Denver, who is pretty young and new in terms of coaching, collaborating in various aspects. So as Maria has been saying, if there's a coach who has a strength in the field events, for example, whereas you allow, and it has happened, I think Coach Philip would have done it in other islands like St. Vincent and the BVI and those places where he would have gone and assisted coaches in some of those areas. Why not get assistance from a coach who has probably Coach Maxwell, for example, who's a good coach in the jumps, and Hudlin, coach, Joseph in the sprints, and other coaches who have strength, who you can collaborate with. I'm not saying it's everyone. You can form bonds, you can form collaborations with other coaches. That way you can exchange, coaching. So the coach may come up to your playing field probably every Wednesday.
Right.
And when he comes up or she comes up, they're dealing specifically with that area. So whether it's the jumps or whatever, they come to deal with that. What do you think about that sort of collaboration, Coach Denva?
I'm obviously open to that. As a matter of fact, we have done that before. Because as I said, the three of us, Shamai, Jeffrey, Akim, Philip, and myself, we're inexperienced, really and truly. So as much as we can get the support from the other experienced coaches out there, we welcome it. I've had conversations with numerous coaches. Knight Simon, I've spoken to Mr. Lee, I've spoken to Ronald Charles, and all of those guys. I mean, we cannot escape that fact that collaboration is key. We don't have all the answers, and there are things that they might be doing, that would benefit us in some way or the other. So I think as much as possible, this is important. If we want to continue to develop track and field in Grenada, then collaboration, even among the coaches, I think that is key moving forward. We cannot be selfish about information. I think, really and truly, the focus is on developing the athletes. The focus is on developing track and field in Grenada. And so as much as possible, if you can support, if you can help another coach, with ideas or whatever, then, we should be open to doing that.
Well said. Coach Lee is saying Cameron Matlin is also from St. Mark. Is that so?
Yes, he's from St. Mark's.
Wow.
So we've had a number of them, from St. Mark's.
Another product of the University of the GBSS came from St. Mark's and excel. So therefore, there's reasons and more reasons why, the momentum track and field is very important, because you have.
We're not going to send them down. We're not going to send them down this time around.
That's what I'm saying. You're not sending them down. You're sending them up. Up one more.
Either up or down.
They went down too much. It's time to go up now.
Either up or down. No, but that to me is important now, because now that you have a structure in place and you have produced so many of athletes and outstanding athletes to be sized, because you have Jeffrey who represented the GBSS, you have Matlin represented the GBSS as well, and I'm talking about quality athletes. And even before that, you mentioned I know Callista's brother.
Callista's, and
we work together, and things like that. So, and Callista's at his time was very much unbeaten. Yes, he was unbeaten. Yeah, I remember they doing the commentary on Marty when Marty returns, and the thing was, Marty is back. That was my thing. Marty is back, because Marty came back and Marty was just blowing the field away. Marty Phillip, she was, I remember she running the huddles.
Right.
Yeah, the huddles, girls huddles, and Marty had not much training. She just had talent, and not
Very
much
talented
in terms of huddling. She just knew how to run the huddles.
Right.
And so definitely. Toro says, Bascom, you can't blame athletes and others for flocking to Canada. You will agree with Rudy and me that Canada is the best country in the world. Very subjective though. Leon Dikoto. Good afternoon to you, Leon. I've been saying this for years now, Leon. Yes, we have to agree. And I know what he's speaking about. We need We need that. We need the clubs. Ask Gianni, gave Donald a replica of the cup. The federation showed thinking is why not? Ask Donald what is a goalpost, and he will ask, "Can I have it?" And Debbie Rouget, yes, Debbie, too much ego, and that's what we have to get rid of. And we'll talk about that in a while. Too much ego, a lot of egos, happening, and
Mhm.
Rudy is not only volunteering on Saturdays with your sports. I saw him last week, busy, sweating, volunteering at the Grenada Showcase in Toronto. I think we should nominate Rudy for an OBE. Yes, Rudy. So they saw you. They saw you.
Yes, yes.
So and she said, "Bro, you know I will help a stone from under the sea and still stand like I did nothing when the stone become gold."
go.
Yes, and Clem said, "Just don't send them to SAS." um,
No,
you know,
SAS is too high.
well, he's saying that with the hope that his wife doesn't see that. That's the problem. He's saying that with the hope that his wife doesn't see that. Just don't send them to SAS. But getting back to that point there, I want to say that, we have been making that call for clubs and affiliates of national associations to start, demanding transparency and accountability of
Mhm.
your executives. Within the past few weeks, and particularly while I was in Grenada, for the Intercall Championships, and then for the Curfew Games, I've heard from so many people, including some parents. In fact, there were two mothers in particular who basically gang me and saying, "You're not leaving until you hear from us," and they were basically complaining, right? And things like that. So, but and they were complaining regarding schools and other sports associations and sort of the treatment, how some schools with the athletes and even how some schools deal with their coaches, and things like that. So, and I'm certain that the parents are willing to speak out on behalf of the coaches, basically, because the coaches are employed with the schools and
Right.
probably afraid to speak out. But, they're concerned. But my generic question at times will be, what do you plan to do to effect change? The problem I see, and really, we have spoken about that before, is that these individuals who get into executives, they declare themselves as agents of change, and not just track and field, whether it's football, cricket, basketball, and when they get into executive positions, you know, the change remains the same. As they say, the more you change, the more you remain the same. And there are those who treat the association too much as their own, and they don't speak or try to engage, with anyone they assume to be, a critic. I always say that, they tend to treat it as, this is my thing, and if Rudian says that, and I don't like what Rudian says, that's it. You know, Even in politics, by the way, government and opposition still get along, despite their political differences.
True.
Yeah.
However, it appears that in sports, it's all about who you like or who you don't like. It's a sort of shame that sports in Grenada, which is relatively volunteer, like what you're doing, Denver, that's
Right.
volunteer, you know, has become a platform for egos and personal vendetta. So, Debian, I was just trying to get onto your point. It's a
Right.
lot about egos. And as a disclaimer, folks, Rudian and I are not paid or employed as sports reporters, right? Whatever we are doing it as volunteers. There are those who
Yeah.
make demands and believe that we should do this and we must do this or say that. Hell no, sorry. We are doing what are within our limits.
Yeah.
there are media organizations in Grenada, and certainly they have paid sporting segments, and thus they can go the extra mile. Whatever we are doing here on a Saturday, we are just doing it out of the love for sports and using technology and the willingness of people like Denver and others that willing to share their story, right? And certainly, that's what I really want to say. But Michael Bascom, what support mechanisms are in place to support these local clubs by the parish sports councils or the Grenada Athletics Association? It's a question that has been asked before. I don't know if I can give an answer. Probably that is where, when we probably have the National Sports Council or someone for the Parish Sports Council that can come on and speak. We have had Kwame Hippolyte from the Athletics Association. He's very receptive to us, I can say. We see him as a friend, right? And we can probably get from him in terms of that, because ultimately that's where, they get the support. The clubs are now important, even for, the Athletics Association can say a lot about track and field now, because what we are seeing is the thriving clubs and how they are performing and their programs. And then we can ask, what sort of support are they getting from the Athletics Association? We don't know. I don't know if Denver could say if he has been receiving any assistance from both the Parish Sports Council or the Grenada Athletic Association, except the word collaboration. Denver?
Well, as I said earlier on, what I can speak about is the collaboration, the collaborative efforts that Momentum Track and Field Club and the Parish Sports Council have been making, and the intention, obviously, to continue along that line. As I said earlier, in terms of sourcing some of the equipment that we need for track and field in the parish. That's as far as I can speak of.
Yeah, we heard the word collaboration again. Unfortunately, much you can add to the word collaboration.
So in all
Collaboration is not dollars and cents to it.
in dollars and cents,
Yeah,
but in all, there is some sort of support and some help coming towards you and towards the club. So through the sports council, and that's important.
Definitely.
You start little. At no point you could say they didn't do anything. They haven't done anything, and you have seen the parish, the St. Mark's, parish sports council is doing something to help you and the club. So that is a good part. That is a good step.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Ron says it's really, really concerning. Something is really wrong. And Mike McQuilkin says, Wesley College needs assistance. The student athletes are not performing. And if you look at where they are located, their performance, something is wrong. So as we get ready to wrap up, Denver, what message would you like to send to young athletes across Grenada and probably particularly St. Mark's, who may be looking at the program, probably the parents as well? What sort of message you would like to leave to them? Certainly, there's a opportunity for them to join the club, to be part of the club, talking about student athletes, athletes themselves. And I'm certain not only students you cater for, but you probably also cater for adults who are willing to be part of the training program of the club, because it's a club. It's a track and field club and not a school club per se. So certainly you're looking for athletes who have probably left school, not in the school system, left school, and who are willing to probably continue their athletic prowess.
Definitely. The idea is not only to focus on school-aged athletes, as you said. We're open to persons who want to come and build the program really and truly. Because I think what's important is having a cadre of mature athletes that would serve as guide to the younger ones. persons who are able to be of example. Yeah, because at some point in time, um, my time as coach, or the other guys, Shamai Jeffrey and Akim Philip, our time would come to an end. So we need persons on board, who can take it when our time comes to an end. The advice, the message I want to send out to young athletes is that you have to be able to believe in yourself and the talent that you have. As I said earlier on, there are artists in St. Mark's who are very talented, naturally talented, and we've seen it over the years. Yeah, I think what's important is them believing in themselves and believing that they have what it takes. Coming out there, being dedicated, being consistent, training and so on. Because you could be talented as you can be. But if you don't have that dedication, if you don't have that commitment towards training and preparation, then you find that someone with less talent will get further than you because they're committed, they're consistent, they're dedicated to the task. I also want to encourage, all the parents. We cannot do this without you. Yeah. Yes, we have some that are on board, but we have other cases where there are parents who are not fully on board and we're not getting the full support. We need you guys. This is not just about us. This club is about St. Mark's. This club is about developing something in our parish. When we see our athletes there on the national television, we don't only feel proud as coaches. The entire St. Mark's, gets the joy. The entire St. Mark's gets the recognition also. And this is what we want to see. It's not just about us, but let us be able to own, let us be able to be a part of this club. Yeah. I also want to encourage persons who have intention to support, provide whatever sponsorship, whatever support. Yes, we have been receiving tremendous support from persons in St. Mark's, businesses and so on. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for the support that you've given to us. But we want to send out a clarion call for more persons to get on board and to support this project, support this movement, support this vision that we have. It's for the greater good of the parish. And if you can get on board, then I think it will do a good for us all in the parish.
Yeah, and Anton Phillips says we are building. The process may be slow, but with time, the work will show. It's a marathon. So we look forward to the end. Look forward to the end. And so while you get ready to wrap up, the names of the folks who are part of the process in terms of development of the club itself. You're the founder, you're also the coach, but who are the others? And whether or not you put in the club into a sort of structure where they'll have probably an executive and run by a body and to ensure that, it's functioning properly and the sustainability as well. Because if you have to attract sponsors, if you start attracting sponsorship and all these sort of things, you have to make sure that you have to ensure that there's a structure in place.
Of course, definitely. We have an executive body actually. Myself as the president, we have Secretary Miss Caris Digans, who's the principal of St. Mark's Secondary School. We have our PRO, Miss Nazinga Phillips, who's also a teacher at St. Mark's Secondary School. We have the Vice President, Mr. Shad Noel. We have other floor members. We have obviously Senator Queens Britton. I can't help but to thank you, sir. You've been with us from start. Whatever needs we have, whenever we call on this gentleman, he has been there. So we want to thank you. We have David Richards. We have Calissus Bonaparte. We have Mr. Gerald Kojo. And of course, we have the members of the coaching staff, myself. We have Mr. Akim Philip and Mr. Shamai Jeffrey, who has been doing a tremendous job, and when I say tremendous, I think the records, the proof is there to show as to the strides that we have been able to make in the past couple of years. And I couldn't have done this without these guys. They serve as support in terms of developing the program. Yes, I know we're pretty young and so on, but I think, the structure and the plans that, they have been putting into place really and truly has been really beneficial, to the athletes, so far, and really want to continue along that line. We also have Vina Wilson, who assists us from time to time, where the coaching and so on is concerned. So, generally, I think, we have persons who really mean good and who really want to see the club develop. But of course, support and help is not too much. Wherever we get it, we're going to take
Well,
it because it's all about development.
well, at one point in time, I thought you'd call the entire St. Mark's because no, but that's good. That the folks who are involved there. And by the way, I must say that Senator Britton is the person who reached out to me, and it was
Right.
since I can tell you since last year. I must admit that he reached out to me about the club. In fact, it was through his invitation that I decided to have the issue with the grassroots clubs and things. The problem is that he thought he gave me your contact.
Yes.
So he eventually apologized. He was like, I really thought I gave you, because, I met her and I said, and I need the contact. I'm doing everybody else. You're the person that told me about, the club and things like that. So I
Yes.
started it, and I'm still without St. Mark's. He said, I really thought I gave you, sorry. And, he gave me it, and that's how we made contact and things like that. So, but I want to thank him for that, because I should have had you on even before you actually had the beat itself,
Right. Okay.
That's where you had the collaboration with St. Mark's.
Smart?
I think. Smart,
Yes.
yeah. Smart. And the St. Mark's Sports Council.
Parish Sports
Right?
Council.
Yeah, the Parish Sports Council and things like that. So, because I think he shared with me the flyer and all that sort of things. But certainly I want to thank you for what you're doing. And it sounds a lot as if it's almost like a community, because, and it is, St. Mark's is very dear to I know they are very patriotic when it comes to, is as how they support Victoria Hurricane, is as how they support the vehicle, so certainly they will support Momentum because it is generic to St. Mark's,
Definitely.
and we look forward to hearing, and and it's so much a pleasure hearing that there's so many outstanding athletes of the recent past who actually came out from St. Mark's,
Yes.
Unfortunately, because there wasn't a club and there wasn't a structure, that they had to turn to the University of the GDSS. But we say, no more up, no more down. There's no
Staying here.
Stay neutral. Stay neutral.
Yeah, you can develop as we say, you can develop at home, and certainly. Yes. Saying Bass, I think they should rope in media friend Asha Andal. Asha never misses a track event. Yeah, Asha is one, and I always thought about Asha because Asha was the person I was thinking about. If I can get Denver, Asha would be able to help me.
Right.
Yeah. And things like
Because
that.
we went to school together, so I know her pretty well.
Right. Yes. And Asha, she loves us St. Mark's, boy. I mean, she died for Victoria. Yeah. But thank you very much, Denver, and all the best with Momentum Track and Field.
Thank you. So just before I leave, I just want to also recognize Miss Debbie and OJ and the TNF team. I think you were there in the stadium when they did that presentation during Intercall. We want to big them up also, and the assistance they're giving to us in terms of shot put and discuss and those things. We're grateful for your support, and of course all the other persons who have been supporting us throughout the couple of years. Thank you so much, and thank you all for having me.
Yes, I must say, thank you for bringing that up, because I think it was the second or the last day of Intercall.
I think it was the
last day, the final day of Intercall. Yes, that day, Debian and her crew came forward to make that that presentation to you, and it had it to do something with someone with a fire or something like that. So I'm trying to remember if there was something, but I recall the presentation made with Debian and Salian and others. Yes, and it was well intended, and they continue to make that sort of contribution to the development of sports And it was good of them because they had activities here in the diaspora. They traveled to Grenada to make the presentation at the Intercall and to meet with some of the athletes and things like that. So I want to also thank them on behalf of Momentum and the others for their contributions to track and field and the development of track and field in Grenada. I thought it was worthwhile. Let me see. Yes, I may be able to come up with something from them. If I'm not mistaken about that, I think they made a valuable contribution to not just to your club, but I think they also did some presentation to others as well. But certainly the folks at what's the name? I try to remember the actual name that of the organization, but they were able to make that sort of presentation to athletes who were competing, and also to these organizations as well. But once again, I want to thank you for being part of the program, accepting the invitation more or less, and being part of the program, because I think what you're doing in St. Mark's is certainly welcome, and I'm looking forward to other such, as we say, probably up north, not too long from now, up north may be able to be on our program and do something. This is just one of the presentations that was made.
Yes.
And that's your colors, right?
Yes, that's what it's purple and fluorescent green.
Yes. So that's Sally and Clark there, and that's Debian Rouget. They made some presentations there. That was during it actually was the second day of Intercall. Second day of Intercall. They made presentations on all 3 days though, but that was the second day. And thanks again, Debian and the group, because I know she actually on the program, she's listening, so they definitely did quite a bit to assist the athletes in Grenada. They made presentations. So when they do their activities here in the diaspora, folks, you basically providing assistance indirectly, because it's not for them. They have activities all year round. In fact, they will be on our program sometime in the coming, weeks. She plans to be there to talk about it, right? This is what you're doing. So here they are. They traveled to Grenada and made presentations. Tangible. Okay, so you can see for yourself what you are providing. So when you come out and support their activities, whether it's their luncheon, whether it's their breakfast, whatever it is that they have, this is what they're actually doing. They're making lives better for our track and field athletes in Grenada. And they're hoping somewhere or the other to ensure that others do that around. Thank you once again, Denver. All the best. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you all for having me.
All right. Yeah. So that's Denva Welsh of the Momentum, the founder and the coach of Momentum Track and Field, Rudian. And certainly it's inspiring that we are getting those grassroots organizations, right? And providing them with this sort of opportunity. And we are hoping that they will be able to get the necessary assistance, because they are making that effort to assist in some way or the other. Yes, so the correct name is Grenada Track and Field Support Group. Okay. Grenada Track and Field Support Group, right? So that's, certainly. And they have been providing the assistance, and I just want to give them that opportunity, because this is two of the members of the organization in Grenada during the Intercall Championships making a presentation, right? And they are planning to do it on almost a yearly basis, annual basis, I should say. So whenever you see the information about the Grenada Track and Field Support Group, in fact, there is I think there's a Facebook page, but you can check out Debbie and Rouget or Sally and Clark, those names. they always post information. Whenever you see that, the Grenada Track and Field Support Group, and they have any of the activities, bear in mind that the activities, this is what it is all about. And they, went to Grenada and provided that Grenada Track and Field Support. Yeah. Um, so, yeah, I was lucky enough to be there to capture them doing that. And certainly, wherever we can assist, let's assist. Yes, Rudian, so it's a wrap for us for this week. Hopefully next week we'll be talking, most likely, I'm not certain, but it could be football. We're getting ready for the Grenada Football Association. Has its annual general meeting coming up. It will be, in fact, the second week in May. It's, I think, the 9th of May, if I'm not mistaken. And there will be 2 slates, for what I heard. Well, the incumbent, and there's another slate that'll be contested. I've reached out to the incumbent to see if they're willing to be on the program. They have, well, the president has rejected it. He has, said he started talking about other things rather than that, and that's why I'm saying that we need people who could stand up to scrutiny. And that's the problem we have in Grenada when it comes to sports. If you hear someone on the program criticizing, you believe that Michael and Rudian against you. Yeah. I mean, listen, we just had a program there, and there were some people who were critical about the way schools treat,
coaches,
the athletes and their coaches. But that doesn't mean to say that the schools are against, look, Mr. Welsh mentioned a member of the executive or the body for Momentum is a principal of the school. He named a principal, he named a teacher. So there's already a working relationship, and that's what we try to encourage, a relationship between the clubs and the schools to ensure that there is this synergy. There's no animosity, there's a synergy, because the schools ultimately benefiting from the clubs. And what we really asking is for support. The schools should support. They should recognize the importance of the clubs and thereby support the club, because what ultimately they're the ones who are benefiting. In fact, the athletes are representing the schools more than even the clubs. That's why we're asking for a club championship, right? Because most of the times they're competing, whether it's at intercall, whether it's this or that, except probably, and in some instances, there's this thing where, should I compete for the school or should I compete for the club? These sort of things. And in some instances, there's a sort of effort to collaborate and to say, hey, for these meets, you'll run or compete for the club. For these meets, you'll compete under the school banner, and that's understandable, right? And that's why we try to ensure too that the club should not just rely on the students. There should be a system in place where even after being a student, you can remain in a club and you can train as a former student. So, for example, a lot of the athletes who may move on to, let's say, the TA Marshall Community College, because there isn't a structure in place for TA Marshall Community College to compete as how the other schools are competing, you need competition from the clubs. So therefore, if they can remain in a club structure, they'll be able to continue to train and ultimately compete, whether it's national relay meet, whether it's Whitsuntide, whether it's a club championship, whatever it is like that. So that's what we're trying to encourage, right? And hopefully, just hopefully, Rudian, that something will work out. But it's important that we get it. All right?
Certainly.
Yeah. All right, then. Thank you very much, Rudian.
All right. Have a good one, and we'll talk soon again.
All the best. Yeah, so that's Rudian Sylvan live from Toronto, Canada, folks. and we're looking forward to. She says, only when money is involved, the school want to fight down the clubs, for instance, really meet. Yeah, that's what I didn't want to go into all that, but that's what the parents were telling me about. They use the example as a really meet, for example, and things like that. So there need to be a better relationship between the schools and the clubs in terms of participation, because the clubs, they are doing all the hard work, and then the schools benefiting, basically. And and it's because really meet, they have money in it. So the schools want the athletes to compete for the schools when it's really meet, because there's money. And I assume once there's money in other meets, the schools will demand that this athletes represent the schools and not the clubs. It shouldn't be like that. It should be an effort where you collaborate, you work together, and ensure that. Okay then, folks, thank you very much for being part of the program. Always a pleasure being with you. I'll let you know what's up for next weekend. Hopefully we'll be talking some football. If not, I'll let you know. But the Grenada Football Association, they have in their annual general meeting soon, and election of officers will be high on the agenda. As a disclosure, I'm letting you know that I've reached out to the Grenada Football Association, yes, through its president, and they've declined to be on the program. He has declined, I should say, to be on the program. So, as a disclaimer, the same. In fact, I've reached out to the Grenada Football Association before any other. Such, I'll ask the others if they're willing to be on the program, the challenger, opposition, whatever it is. And if they do accept, then they'll be part of the program. Okay? Folks, thank you very much for being on the program. It's always a pleasure being with you. Look forward to your company next week, God's willing. Until then, do have yourself a pleasant